The alarm blared through the Seoul Space Observatory at exactly 3:17 a.m. Dr. Kim Ta jumped from his chair, spilling cold coffee across his desk. The computer screens flashed red with urgent alerts. "Sir, you need to see this," said his young assistant, pointing at the main screen. Dr. Kim adjusted his glasses and stared at the display. The detection system showed massive objects entering the solar system near Neptune's orbit. They moved in perfect formation, too perfect to be natural. "Call the Defense Ministry now," he ordered, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Within hours, similar reports came in from observatories around the world. By noon, Dr. Kim stood in a crowded emergency meeting at the United Nations Space Command in Geneva. Leaders from every major nation watched the screens with pale faces. "The objects are definitely ships," announced the UNSC director. 17 of them. The smallest is larger than our biggest space station. Captain Han Su, dressed in her crisp military uniform, leaned toward Dr. Kim. "What do you think, old friend?" "I think everything changes today," he replied quietly. The room fell silent as the main screen flickered. A strange symbol appeared, followed by a message in a language no human had ever seen. Dr. Kim moved forward, his eyes wide with professional interest. As the world's leading xenolinguist, this was the moment he had prepared for his entire career. For 3 days, Dr. Kim barely slept. He worked with computers and fellow linguists to decode the alien message. The alien fleet remained near Neptune, waiting. On the 4th day, Dr. Kim stood before the United Nations Security Council. "We have decoded their first message," he announced. "They call themselves the Vordak Imperium. Their exact words are, 'We claim this star system as part of the Vordak Imperium. Prepare tribute or face cleansing.'" Worried murmurs filled the room. "Cleansing?" asked the Secretary General. "Are we certain of this translation?" "Yes," Dr. Kim replied. "The term they use has no ambiguity. It refers to complete removal." Captain Han stepped forward. "The military analysis is clear. Their technology is far beyond ours. Their ships have weapons systems we cannot even understand yet." The alien fleet began moving toward Earth the next day. They positioned their massive ships in orbit, casting giant shadows over major cities as they passed overhead. Panic spread across the planet. Some people fled to rural areas. Others prayed. Many just watched the skies in fear. A smaller alien craft descended to the International Orbital Diplomatic Station. The Earth Coalition, formed in record time, selected representatives to meet the visitors. Dr. Kim and Captain Han joined General Park Ji as Earth's primary contact team. They'd waited in the station's conference room, hearts pounding as the airlock opened. The Vordak ambassador entered. He stood nearly 3 meters tall with 8 limbs and skin that shimmered like oil on water. His eyes, 4 of them, scanned the humans with cold interest. "You understand our message," the alien said through a translation device. It wasn't a question. "We do," Dr. Kim replied. "We wish to discuss peaceful." The ambassador raised a limb. "There is nothing to discuss. The Vordak Imperium has claimed this system. You will provide tribute or be cleansed. This is the natural order." General Park stepped forward. "We would like to understand your requirements before making any decisions." The alien made a sound like rocks grinding together, perhaps laughter. "Very well. I will explain what you must provide to survive. You have 30 Earth days to prepare the first tribute. After that, we will see if your species deserves to continue existing." Dr. Kim noticed Captain Han's hand tighten on her sidearm. He gave her a warning glance. Not yet. The future of humanity now balanced on the edge of a knife. The meeting room on the orbital station felt too small with the Vordak ambassador inside it. The alien stood tall, his 4 eyes never blinking as he spoke. "Here is what we require," he said, touching a device on his arm. A 3-dimensional map of Earth appeared above the table. Dr. Kim Ta watched silently. Next to him, Captain Han Su and General Park Ji exchanged quick glances. 30% of your planet's metals, 40% of your fresh water, 5,000 human specimens for biological study. The ambassador pointed at different locations on the map. Collection points will be established here, here, and here. That's impossible, General Park said firmly. Those demands would cause worldwide suffering. The ambassador made that grinding sound again, his version of laughter. Your comfort is not our concern. The tribute is reasonable. We could demand more. Dr. Kim stepped forward carefully. May I ask a question? The alien tilted his head. Speak. Has any species ever refused your demands? The ambassador's skin rippled with colors. None who survived today. The Vordak Imperium rules over 2,000 worlds. All pay tribute. And if we refuse? Captain Han asked. Then we begin cleansing. Your major cities first. Then we take what we want anyway. The ambassador displayed images of strange weapons. These can turn your largest buildings to dust in seconds. After the meeting, Earth's representatives returned to the planet. They gathered in the United Nations emergency bunker beneath Switzerland. Leaders from every nation argued loudly about what to do. We must fight, shouted the Russian president. With what? Countered the Chinese premier. Their smallest ship could destroy our combined space forces. Dr. Kim sat quietly, thinking. Captain Han nudged him. You've been silent. Doctor, what's on your mind? Before he could answer, General Park called for attention. He displayed scans of the Vordak ships. Their technology is advanced, but not magic, he said. Our scientists have been analyzing their ships since they arrived. We may have found something interesting. The room grew quiet. Dr. Kim, please show them what you discovered, General Park said. Dr. Kim stood and walked to the front of the room. The Vordak communication systems use quantum entanglement technology, but their approach is strange. It's as if they discovered a powerful tool but don't fully understand how it works. He showed technical diagrams on the main screen. They rely heavily on central control. Their ships, their weapons, everything connects to command centers. It's efficient but potentially vulnerable. How does this help us? Asked the American president. We still can't match their firepower. Captain Han stepped forward. It means we might not need to. Later that night, Dr. Kim received an urgent call. A Vordak scout ship had crashed in the Korean mountains. He rushed to the secret facility where it had been taken. When he arrived, he found Lee Min already examining the wreckage. Lee was South Korea's most brilliant engineer, known for thinking in ways others couldn't. Look at this, Lee said, pointing to the ship's control systems. Their technology is advanced, but their approach is rigid. They solve problems with brute force, not elegance. Dr. Kim studied the alien technology. Can you understand how it works? Lee smiled slightly. Better than they do, I think. They've been the strongest for so long. They've stopped innovating. They don't expect challenges. Meanwhile, Captain Han had secretly returned to the orbital station. She planted tiny surveillance devices and discovered something horrifying. In the ambassador's private quarters, she found images of other planets that had submitted to Vordak demands. The first images showed planets providing tribute. The later images showed the same worlds stripped bare, their populations enslaved or worse. When she returned to Earth, she showed the evidence to Dr. Kim, General Park, and Lee Min. We cannot give them what they want, she said grimly. Submission isn't survival. General Park nodded slowly. Then we must prepare to say no. Dr. Kim looked at the countdown timer on the wall. 28 days remained before the Vordak expected their answer. Deep beneath the city of Seoul, in a facility unknown to most people, 4 people worked day and night. The underground room was filled with computers, strange equipment, and pieces of the crashed Vordak scout ship. Dr. Kim Ta stood before a screen showing alien symbols. Captain Han Su cleaned her weapon in the corner. General Park Ji spoke quietly on a secure line, and Lee Min, his hands moving quickly over alien technology, smiled suddenly. "I found it," Lee said. The others gathered around him immediately. Lee pointed to a small device from the crashed ship. "This is part of their communication system. They use quantum connections like we do. But their approach is fundamentally flawed." "Flawed how?" General Park asked. 20 years ago, Earth scientists tried this same approach. We abandoned it because it becomes unstable with distance. Lee connected the device to his computer. The Vordak never solved this problem. They just build stronger transmitters and receivers. Dr. Kim looked thoughtful. "So their entire empire is built on a technology with a basic weakness," Lee finished. "They compensate with power, not good design." Captain Han set down her weapon. "Can we use this against them?" "Yes," Lee said. "I believe we can create a disruption signal that would interfere with their communication network. If their ships can't talk to each other, they can't coordinate their attack," General Park concluded. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world leaders publicly debated whether to submit to Vordak demands. Some countries began gathering resources for the tribute. News reports showed people preparing for the first collection. The Vordak watched from orbit, satisfied with humanity's apparent submission. But it was all a show. In secret factories around the world, engineers built thousands of small devices based on Lee's design. Scientists tested the disruption signal on captured Vordak technology. Military forces trained for a very different kind of warfare than the aliens expected. 20 days before the deadline, Captain Han volunteered for the most dangerous mission yet. "I need to get back to the orbital station," she told the others. "We need to know exactly how they'll respond when we refuse." "It's too dangerous," Dr. Kim argued. "The ambassador knows your face now." Captain Han smiled. "He knows my face as a diplomat, not as someone else." 2 days later, a maintenance worker arrived at the orbital station. With perfect fake identification, Captain Han gained access to restricted areas. She placed tiny devices throughout the station and listened to private Vordak communications. What she learned chilled her blood. The Vordak didn't just take resources from conquered worlds. They eventually took everything. Planet after planet had been stripped completely. Populations were worked to death or used for experiments. No world that submitted to the Vordak survived more than 50 years. On her last night on the station, Captain Han found the ambassador's private files. They contained the Vordak battle plans for Earth. The aliens expected little resistance. They planned to establish control centers in every major city. Their strategy relied entirely on central command and overwhelming force. When Captain Han returned to Earth, she met the others in the underground facility. "They expect us to be afraid," she reported. "They've never met a species that wasn't terrified of them. Their battle plans are built on that assumption." Lee looked up from his work. "Then they don't understand humans very well." General Park studied the Vordak battle plans. "Their strategy has no backup plan. They don't expect to need one." Dr. Kim had been working on the final part of their plan. He pointed to a screen showing the single Vordak word. "This is what we'll say to them," he said, in their language with perfect pronunciation. The others looked at the word. Captain Han nodded slowly. "One word. That's all we need." "One word," Dr. Kim confirmed. The word they'd never heard from any species before. The word on the screen translated to a simple English message. The day before the Vordak deadline, Earth seemed ready to surrender. Trucks filled with metals and water moved toward the designated collection points. News channels showed these preparations around the clock. From space, it looked like humans had accepted their fate. The Vordak ambassador watched these activities with satisfaction. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he prepared for the formal acceptance ceremony. He had done this many times on many worlds. The pattern never changed. Dr. Kim Ta stood before a mirror in his quarters on the orbital station. He adjusted his formal suit and practiced the Vordak language one final time. The alien words felt strange in his mouth, but he had mastered them perfectly. General Park Ji contacted him through a secure line. "All preparations are complete. Li Min has activated the network. Captain Han is in position. Is there any sign they suspect our plan? Dr. Kim asked. None, replied General Park. Their arrogance blinds them. They expect only submission. At exactly noon, Dr. Kim entered the grand meeting hall of the orbital station. The Vordak ambassador waited with his guards. Behind them, a massive screen showed the Vordak fleet in orbit. The message was clear: resist and be destroyed. Representatives from major Earth governments sat silently at a long table. They had been carefully selected, people who knew the plan but could also act convincingly scared. Their fear seemed real to the aliens. The ambassador spoke first. The deadline has arrived. You will now formally accept your place in the Vordak Imperium and agree to provide tribute as demanded. Dr. Kim stepped forward as Earth's official speaker. The hall fell completely silent. The ambassador's translator device waited for Earth's formal acceptance speech. The guards stood relaxed, expecting no trouble. Dr. Kim looked directly at the ambassador and spoke a single word in perfect Vordak language. No. For several seconds, nobody moved. The ambassador's skin rippled with confusion. His guards looked at each other. Your translator has malfunctioned, the ambassador finally said. Repeat your response. Dr. Kim smiled slightly. The translator works perfectly. Our answer is no. We will not provide tribute. We will not submit to the Vordak Imperium. The ambassador's skin turned dark red. This is not possible. No species has ever refused. Humans are different, Dr. Kim replied calmly. The ambassador stood to his full height, towering over Dr. Kim. You have inferior technology and weapons. You cannot win. You will be cleansed from your world. Dr. Kim remained calm. Perhaps you mistake technological advancement for evolutionary advantage. The ambassador made a sharp gesture, and his guards raised their weapons. You have made a fatal error. The cleansing will begin in 24 hours. We will be ready, Dr. Kim said. As the Earth representatives were escorted out, the ambassador sent an urgent message to the Vordak fleet commander. Begin preparations for full planetary cleansing. This species has chosen extinction. Back on Earth, in the underground facility, Li Nin watched the meeting on a secure feed. He turned to General Park and Captain Han. It's done. They took the bait. Captain Han checked her weapons. Are all military units in position? General Park nodded. Everyone knows their role. The moment the Vordak attack begins, we activate Project Echo. Li Min pointed to a global map showing thousands of tiny dots, the disruption devices placed around the world and in orbit. Once activated, these will interfere with all Vordak communications. Their rigid command structure will become their greatest weakness. Dr. Kim returned to Earth on the last shuttle from the orbital station. When he arrived at the underground facility, the others were waiting. 24 hours, he said. That's how long we have until they attack. General Park smiled grimly. They expect to find a frightened, disorganized planet. Instead, they'll find a trap. As night fell across Earth, millions of people moved to underground shelters. Not in panic, but according to carefully made plans. On the surface, everything appeared abandoned and defenseless. In space, the Vordak fleet moved into attack position, ready to punish the first species that had ever dared to say no. The Vordak attack began at dawn. First came the electromagnetic pulses. Great waves of energy washed over Earth, designed to disable all electronic systems. Cities went dark. Communications fell silent. From orbit, Earth appeared defenseless. In the Vordak command ship, the fleet commander watched with satisfaction. The primitive systems have failed. Begin landing operations. Massive Vordak ships descended through Earth's atmosphere. They positioned themselves above major cities: New York, Moscow, Beijing, and Seoul. Smaller craft carried thousands of Vordak soldiers to the ground. In Seoul, Captain Han Su watched from a hidden bunker as alien ships filled the sky. Next to her, a young soldier trembled slightly. "There's so many," the soldier whispered. Captain Han checked her special communication device, one of Li Min's inventions, protected from the electromagnetic pulse. "Numbers aren't everything," she said calmly. The Vordak landed in Seoul's central plaza. Their commander stepped forward, his battle armor making him even taller and more frightening. He spoke through a loudspeaker in heavily accented human language. "Your resistance has failed. Surrender now, and some may live as servants." No one answered. The city appeared abandoned. The Vordak commander ordered his troops to move forward. They advanced through empty streets, weapons ready. Their sensors detected no human technology operating. They believed their electromagnetic pulse had worked perfectly. They were wrong. Deep underground, in bunkers across the world, humans waited. Their systems, specially shielded by Li Min's technology, remained operational. General Park Ji watched the alien movements on protected screens. "They're following exactly the pattern Captain Han discovered," he said to Dr. Kim Ta. "They're completely predictable." Dr. Kim nodded. "They've never needed to adapt. They've always been the strongest." In a special chamber nearby, Li Min made final adjustments to Project Echo. The room was filled with equipment based on the Vordak's own technology, but modified in ways the aliens never imagined. "Ready on your command, General," Li reported. Above ground, the Vordak established control points in each city. They set up their communication centers exactly as planned. Their confidence grew with each step. This planet would be easier to conquer than most. In Seoul, the Vordak commander reported to the fleet. No resistance encountered. Beginning Phase 2 operations. The ambassador, watching from the command ship, nodded with satisfaction. Humans talk bravely, but hide when faced with real power, like all the others. At that moment, General Park gave the order. "Activate Project Echo." Li Min pressed a sequence of controls. Across the planet, and in orbit, thousands of tiny devices activated simultaneously. They began broadcasting a special signal, one that exploited the fundamental flaw in Vordak quantum communications. In an instant, chaos erupted among the alien forces. The Vordak commander in Seoul suddenly lost contact with his troops. His orders went unheard. His reports to the fleet failed to transmit. All around him, Vordak soldiers stopped in confusion, unable to receive commands. Captain Han spoke into her communication device. Now, from buildings, sewers, and hidden bunkers, human forces emerged. They moved in small, independent groups, each knowing their mission without needing central command. This was how humans had fought wars for thousands of years. Adaptable, decentralized, creative. The Vordak, dependent on constant instructions from superiors, faltered. In space, Vordak ships lost coordination. Some fired weapons randomly. Others drifted out of formation. The fleet commander frantically tried to restore order, but the disruption signal grew stronger. The ambassador rushed to the command center. "What is happening?" "Our communication network is failing," the fleet commander replied. "We cannot coordinate our forces. Impossible. Their technology is primitive." On the ground, Captain Han led her team against confused Vordak soldiers. The aliens had better weapons but couldn't use them effectively without coordination. Human forces moved quickly, struck decisively, then disappeared again. The first day of battle ended with the Vordak in disarray. Their careful plans had fallen apart. The easy victory they expected had not materialized. Instead, they faced an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. The second day of the invasion began with confusion among the Vordak forces. Their commanders tried to regroup, setting up new communication systems. They believed the disruption was temporary. They were wrong again. In the underground facility, Li Min worked tirelessly. As the Vordak adjusted their communication frequencies, he adjusted Project Echo to match. "They're trying to work around our disruption," he told Dr. Kim Ta. "But they don't understand what's happening. They think it's a technical problem, not an attack." Dr. Kim nodded. The Vordak never imagined a lesser species could understand their technology. let alone improve on it. General Park Jae entered the room with new reports. Our forces have successfully engaged Vordak troops in 12 major cities. Captain Han's team in Seoul has captured alien weapons and a small ship. On the streets of Seoul, Captain Han led a group of 20 soldiers through the city's back alleys. They moved quickly and silently, communicating with hand signals. Unlike the Vordak, they didn't need constant orders from above. They reached a Vordak control point. The aliens had established it in a city square, with 10 soldiers guarding strange equipment. The Vordak stood in strict formation, waiting for orders that couldn't reach them. Captain Han signaled her team. They separated into small groups, approaching from multiple directions. This was how humans had hunted since prehistoric times, cooperating without speaking, adapting to each situation. The attack was swift and coordinated. Within minutes, the Vordak position was overrun. The aliens fought bravely, but couldn't adjust to the humans' unpredictable movements. Similar scenes played out across the planet. Human forces emerged from hiding, struck quickly, then disappeared again. They didn't try to hold ground or establish positions. They focused on disrupting Vordak operations and capturing their technology. In orbit, the Vordak command ship struggled to understand what was happening. The ambassador paced angrily. How can they be fighting effectively? Our pulse disabled their communication systems. The fleet commander studied the reports. They don't seem to rely on central command like we do. Each human group operates independently but somehow coordinates with others. Impossible. No advanced military can function without proper command structure. The fleet commander looked troubled. Perhaps we have misunderstood these humans. On Earth, Dr. Kim visited Captain Han's position in Seoul. He examined the captured Vordak equipment. Their technology is powerful but inflexible, he observed. They never expected to fight an enemy who thinks differently. Captain Han showed him the captured Vordak ship. We've figured out how to operate it. Lee Min's team is already taking it apart to learn more. Dr. Kim smiled. The Vordak believe technological advancement is measured by power. We know it's measured by adaptability. By evening, Project Echo had expanded. The disruption signals now reached farther into space, affecting more Vordak ships. On the ground, human forces had captured key alien positions in most major cities. The Vordak ambassador demanded action. We must use the planet cleanser weapons. End this resistance now. We cannot, the fleet commander replied. The weapons require precise coordination between multiple ships. With our communication network disrupted, attempting to use them could destroy our own forces. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Vordak faced a problem they couldn't solve with brute force. In the Seoul Command Center, General Park briefed world leaders. The Vordak are falling back. They're trying to establish a new command structure, but Project Echo continues to disrupt their efforts. Dr. Kim added, they don't understand that their entire approach to technology has a fundamental weakness. They built an empire on power, not innovation. Captain Han cleaned her weapon as she listened. How long until they bring reinforcements? Lee Min looked up from his work on a Vordak device. Based on their communications we intercepted, they've already called for help. We have maybe 3 days before more ships arrive. General Park nodded grimly. Then we have 3 days to prepare the next phase of our defense. The Vordak had expected an easy victory. Instead, they had walked into humanity's trap. 3 days passed quickly. Humans worked without rest to prepare for the Vordak reinforcements. In workshops around the world, engineers built new weapons based on captured alien technology. Lee Min led this effort, improving the designs in ways the Vordak had never considered. Their weapons are wasteful, Lee explained to Dr. Kim Ta. They used too much energy because they never needed to be efficient. In orbit, the first Vordak reinforcements arrived. 20 massive warships joining the original fleet. The alien ambassador greeted them with relief. These humans are more trouble than expected, he told the reinforcement commander. But now we will crush them completely. The commander studied the battle reports with concern. They've adapted to our technology too quickly. This has never happened before. They are still primitives, the ambassador insisted. With these new ships, we will show them the price of defiance. On Earth, General Park G watched the growing Vordak fleet on special screens. The room was quiet as military leaders from around the world assessed the threat. They have enough firepower to destroy our major cities 10 times over, one general said grimly. General Park nodded calmly. Yes, but first they need to coordinate their attack. And that is still their weakness. He turned to a large map showing hundreds of small dots in orbit around Earth. Phase 2 of our defense is ready. Captain Hand's team has placed disruption satellites throughout near-Earth orbit. Captain Hand stood at the back of the room, bandaged from recent fighting but standing tall. The satellites are in position. The Vordak haven't detected them because they're made from materials that don't show on their scanners. Dr. Kim stepped forward. With these satellites, we can extend Project Echo's effect to the entire solar system. Even their reinforcements will be affected. In space, the Vordak prepared for a massive coordinated attack. The reinforcement commander took charge, believing he could overcome the communication problems that had plagued the first wave. We will begin with synchronized strikes on their largest cities, he ordered. All ships will fire simultaneously on my command. The Vordak fleet moved into position. Weapon systems powered up. The commander prepared to give the final order. At that moment, General Park gave a simple command. Activate the satellites. Li Nin pressed a single button. Throughout Earth orbit, hundreds of small devices activated at once. The disruption signal that had affected the ground forces now expanded to reach every Vordak ship in the solar system. Chaos erupted among the alien fleet. The synchronized attack collapsed immediately. Some ships fired weapons in random directions. Others lost power. Several nearly collided as they drifted out of formation. The reinforcement commander watched in horror as his carefully planned attack fell apart. What is happening? How are they doing this? On the largest screen in the underground command center, Dr. Kim opened a channel to all Vordak ships. He spoke in their language, his voice calm and clear. Your Imperium is built on the subjugation of those who submitted. We are not them. The message repeated on all Vordak frequencies. No matter how they tried to block it, the message continued. Captain Hand turned to General Park. Now. He nodded. Now. Around the world, humans launched their counterattack. Fighters took off from hidden airfields, using modified Vordak technology. Ground forces advanced against confused alien troops. In orbit, Earth's small but determined space fleet engaged the disorganized Vordak ships. In Seoul, Captain Han led a special team to capture the Vordak ground commander. The alien fought fiercely, but couldn't coordinate with his troops. Within hours, he was secured in a special containment facility. By sunset, the tide had turned completely. Vordak forces retreated wherever they could. Many surrendered, shocked by the rapid collapse of their advantage. The reinforcement commander sent an emergency message back to the Vordak homeworld. Send the Supreme Commander. This planet has weapons or abilities we don't understand. The Imperium itself may be at risk. In the underground facility, humans celebrated their victories, but General Park remained serious. This isn't over, he warned. They'll send more ships, more troops. And next time, they'll be prepared for our tactics. Dr. Kim nodded. Yes, but so will we. And we have something they don't. What's that? Asked a young soldier. Dr. Kim smiled. The ability to learn from our mistakes. 1 week after the failed Vordak reinforcement attack, Li Nin made an important discovery. He had been studying the captured communication devices from Vordak ships. Their communication network doesn't just connect their military, he told the others excitedly. It connects their entire empire. Captain Han Su looked up from cleaning her weapon. What does that mean for us? Li's eyes shined with possibility. It means we can send messages to every world in the Vordak Imperium. Dr. Kim Ta immediately understood. We can tell other conquered species about our resistance. General Park G nodded slowly. And how to fight back. In the days that followed, the team worked on a new plan. They created a special message in the Vordak language. It explained how Earth had resisted the invasion and included technical details about the Vordak communication weakness. Most importantly, it included instructions for building disruptor devices like Project Echo. Captain Han recorded her experiences fighting the Vordak ground forces. She explained how small, independent teams could defeat the aliens who relied too heavily on Central Command. Ready to transmit, Lee announced when the message was complete. General Park gave his approval. Send it. With the press of a button, the message shot through the Vordak's own communication network. It reached thousands of worlds across their empire. Species that had lived under Vordak control for generations suddenly received hope. In space, the Vordak ambassador received terrible news from the homeworld. Reports came in of uprisings on multiple planets. The disruption technology was spreading. For the first time in their history, the Vordak faced rebellion across their entire empire. This cannot be allowed, the ambassador hissed. These humans must be destroyed completely as a warning to others. Soon after, Earth's long-range sensors detected a massive ship entering the solar system. It was many times larger than any previous Vordak vessel. Aboard was the supreme commander of the Vordak Imperium, bringing with him the most powerful weapons in their arsenal. In the underground command center, tension filled the air. Their supreme commander has arrived, General Park announced. Our scouts report his ship carries planet-killer weapons. They're planning to destroy Earth entirely. Dr. Kim looked troubled. They'll use us as an example to frighten other rebellious worlds. Captain Han checked her equipment. Can Project Echo affect his ship too? Lee nodded. Yes, but they'll be expecting it now. They'll have countermeasures. We need something new. For 3 days, Earth prepared for the final battle. Li Nin worked without sleep, developing new disruption techniques. Military forces positioned themselves around the globe. Everyone knew this would be the decisive confrontation. The Supreme Commander wasted no time. His massive ship moved directly toward Earth, ignoring standard tactical approaches. Its central weapon began to glow with energy, a planet killer capable of cracking Earth's crust. In the command center, General Park gave the order. All units engage. This is not a drill. Earth's defenses activated at once. The disruption satellites focused their signals on the Supreme Commander's ship. Fighter craft launched from hidden bases. Ground-based weapons, modified from captured Vordak technology, fired upward. But the Supreme Commander was prepared. His ship had special shielding against the disruption signal. The planet-killer weapon continued charging. It's not working, Lee said, his fingers flying across controls. They've adapted. Dr. Kim looked at the screen showing the Supreme Commander's ship. Every system has a weakness, even theirs. Then Captain Han noticed something. Look at the energy readings from their weapon. It's connected to their main communications array. They need both systems working together to target properly. Lee understood immediately. If we can't disrupt their communications directly, we overload it instead, Captain Han finished. Lee quickly modified the disruption signal. Instead of trying to block the Vordak communications, he amplified them, sending massive amounts of data through their system all at once. On the Supreme Commander's ship, alarms blared. Systems overheated. The carefully calibrated planet-killer weapon became unstable. The Supreme Commander raged at his crew. Fire the weapon now. Destroy this world. But it was too late. The overloaded systems failed catastrophically. The weapon's energy turned back on itself. The massive ship shuddered, sections breaking apart. On screens around the world, humans watched as the Supreme Commander's ship exploded in orbit. A cheer went up in the command center, but Dr. Kim remained serious. This isn't just a victory for Earth, he said. It's the beginning of freedom for thousands of worlds. 3 months after the destruction of the Supreme Commander's ship, Earth had changed forever. Cities showed signs of battle but were being rebuilt quickly. Humans worked alongside captured Vordak, who had chosen to surrender rather than continue fighting. In Seoul, a new building rose from the city center, the Galactic Embassy. Its design combined human architecture with elements from a dozen alien worlds. Above it, ships from distant planets moved through Earth's atmosphere, bringing visitors instead of invaders. Dr. Kim Ta stood at the embassy's main window, watching the activity outside. Captain Han Soo joined him, her uniform now decorated with medals. "Still hard to believe," she said quietly. Dr. Kim nodded. "That a single word could change the galaxy." "Yes." General Park Jae entered the room, followed by Lee Min. Both men looked tired but satisfied. They had just finished another meeting with representatives from former Vordak worlds. 17 more planets have joined the alliance, General Park announced. They've successfully overthrown their Vordak governors. Lee Min added, and they're already implementing their own versions of Project Echo. The Vordak will never regain control of those systems. The Vordak Imperium was collapsing rapidly. After the death of the Supreme Commander, their rigid hierarchy had fallen into chaos. Without their communication network, they couldn't maintain control over their vast empire. Planet after planet declared independence. Most importantly, the former Vordak subjects didn't seek revenge. Instead, inspired by Earth's example, they sought to build something new. The first meeting of the Galactic Alliance will begin soon, General Park reminded them. We should prepare. The grand hall of the embassy filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some floated in special atmosphere containers. Others towered over the humans. Many had lived under Vordak rule for generations. Dr. Kim took the speaker's position. As Earth's chief diplomat, he had helped organize this historic gathering. "Welcome to Earth," he began simply. "Just months ago, most of us didn't know the others existed. The Vordak kept us isolated, afraid, believing we were alone in our subjugation." Sounds of agreement came from around the room. When the Vordak came to Earth, they expected what they always found: fear and submission. They demanded tribute. Our answer was simple: no. The room filled with approving noises from the various species. That one word changed everything. Not because it was powerful in itself, but because it represented a choice. The choice to resist rather than submit. The choice to work together rather than alone. Captain Han watched from the side, remembering the battles that had seemed impossible to win. General Park stood tall, thinking of the soldiers who had fought bravely against overwhelming odds. Lee Min smiled slightly, proud of how his technological innovations had spread to help others. "Today we form the Galactic Alliance," Dr. Kim continued. "Not an empire built on fear and tribute, but a community based on mutual respect and cooperation. No species will demand from another. All will contribute what they can and receive what they need." The first order of business was to help worlds still fighting Vordak forces. The second was to establish communication systems independent of Vordak technology. The third was to share scientific knowledge that the Vordak had hoarded for centuries. As the meeting progressed, Dr. Kim stepped back to join his friends. "Did you ever imagine this?" Captain Han asked quietly. "When you said that one word to the ambassador?" Dr. Kim smiled. "No. I just knew we couldn't say yes." Lee Min looked at the gathered aliens with curiosity. "Think of what we can learn from each other. Their science, our adaptability. The possibilities are endless." General Park nodded thoughtfully. The Vordak thought power came from control. They never understood that real strength comes from cooperation. Outside the embassy, children played in a park that had once been a battlefield. Above them, ships from distant stars moved peacefully through Earth's sky. And far away, other worlds looked to Earth with hope, the planet that had taught the galaxy the power of saying no. The simple human refusal had started a revolution that would reshape the stars forever.